Welcome to Ho'oponopono Blessings. Today, we are going to talk about a truth that can completely transform the way you see your tiredness, your life, and yourself. Today's topic is, you are not tired. You are misaligned with who you are. Take a deep breath for a moment. Because perhaps, for the first time in a long time, you don't need to blame yourself for having no energy. Perhaps the problem isn't a lack of strength. Perhaps it isn't laziness. Perhaps it isn't weakness. Perhaps it isn't inability. Perhaps what you call tiredness is, in truth, the weight of living far from your essence. And when a person lives disconnected from who they truly are, even the simplest tasks feel heavy. Even waking up seems difficult. Even existing seems to demand too much effort. In this video, you will understand why this happens. We are going to talk about Ho'oponopono, about inner cleansing, about identity, about Neville Goddard, about noetics, and about how internal misalignment can drain your energy more than any hectic routine. And more than just understanding, you will learn how to begin returning to yourself. What seems like tiredness is often inner disconnection. Many people say, "I am tired all the time. I have no energy for anything. Even when I rest, I remain exhausted. It feels like my soul is heavy." And yes, there are times when the body truly needs rest, sleep, care, balance. But there is a type of exhaustion that physical rest does not cure. You sleep, and you're still tired. You take a vacation, and you're still empty. You distract yourself, and you're still heavy inside. This happens because not all tiredness is born from the body. Some is born from the soul. Some is born from the mind. Some is born from the conflict between who you are and who you are trying to be in order to survive, to please, to fit in, to not disappoint, to not lose love, to not lose approval. And that consumes energy. Consuming energy to pretend to be something all the time. Consuming energy to say yes when your soul screams no. Consuming energy to sustain a version of yourself that no longer aligns with your heart. All of this deeply tires you. In Ho'oponopono, we understand that much of what we experience comes from memories, programs, unconscious repetitive patterns. In other words, you may be living today a way of being that was not born from your truth, but from old conditioning. Perhaps you learn to be strong all the time. Perhaps you learn not to show pain. Perhaps you learn to prioritize everyone except yourself. Perhaps you learn to adapt so much that you gradually abandoned yourself. And then one day you wake up tired of life. But deep down, perhaps you are tired of drifting away from yourself. Being misaligned with who you are means living in contradiction with your essence. It is when your soul asks for calm, but you live in haste. It is when your heart asks for truth, but you live as a character. It is when your intuition says that path is not for you, but fear forces you to continue. It is when on the outside everything seems normal, but on the inside something is always bothering you. Misalignment is when your external life is being built by fear, not by truth. By obligation, not by presence. By neediness, not by awareness. By automatism, not by choice. And this misalignment can appear in many forms. You feel guilty when you rest. You feel anxious for no apparent reason. You can no longer get excited about what once made sense. You feel constant irritation. You sabotage yourself. You procrastinate. You feel a strange emptiness, even when everything seems fine on the surface. Often, the body begins to say what the soul has been trying to say silently for a long time. The body feels heavy. The mind becomes confused. Emotions fluctuate. Energy disappears. Not because you are incapable, but because a part of you is asking to return. Asking for truth. Asking for reconnection. Ho'oponopono is a practice of inner cleansing. It teaches us that what we see, feel, and repeat is often linked to memories stored in the subconscious. These memories influence our thoughts, emotions, decisions, reactions, and even our perception of identity. So when you live misaligned, this may be related to old memories of rejection, fear, abandonment, humiliation, guilt, scarcity, insecurity. You begin to live not from your essence, but from your programming. And programming always tries to protect, but it often imprisons. Ho'oponopono enters precisely there, to clean what obscures your truth. When you repeat, "I'm sorry," Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. You are not just saying beautiful words. You are signaling to your inner system that you wish to dissolve what is false, heavy, repetitive, and limiting. You are opening space for inspiration, for peace, for your real identity to emerge without so much noise. It's like cleaning a mirror that has been foggy for years. The mirror hasn't lost its ability to reflect. It was just covered. You haven't lost who you are either. Maybe you're just covered by memories, pains, old characters, and emotional habits. Neville Goddard taught something very deep. External reality reflects the state of consciousness you occupy internally. This means your life doesn't just respond to what you do. It responds to who you are being, to the state you accept as true, to the identity you wear inside yourself. And here lies a powerful key. When you insist on living in a state that contradicts your inner truth, it creates wear and tear. If deep down you want peace, but live in a state of struggle. If deep down you want love, but live in a state of defense. If deep down you want expansion, but live in a state of fear, there is friction. And friction generates exhaustion. Neville said we should assume the state of the wish fulfilled. But this goes beyond imagining something. It's about becoming internally compatible with what you wish to experience. And sometimes, what tires you isn't your routine. It's the internal state you sustain every day. You might be unknowingly sustaining the state of someone who needs to prove their worth, of someone who fears failing, of someone who believes resting is failing, of someone who believes they will only be loved if they perform, produce, deliver, please. That state drains you, because it isn't natural to the soul. It's a survival disguise. Assuming a new state, according to Neville, is choosing internally. I am no longer the version that lives in lack, fear, confusion, and self-denial. I now assume the consciousness of someone at peace, whole, aligned, and guided. And that changes everything. Noetics. Your consciousness affects your experience of reality. Noetics, simply put, explores consciousness as a fundamental part of the human experience. It invites us to look beyond raw matter, understanding that thought, intention, perception, and internal state have a real impact on how we live. When we bring this to today's theme, we realize something very important. Your energy level isn't just physical. It's also informational, emotional, mental, and consciousness-based. In other words, how you perceive yourself, how you interpret life, how you feel about yourself. All of this directly interferes with your field of experience. A person in inner coherence can do a lot with peace. A person in inner incoherence can do little and still feel exhausted. Why? Because incoherence consumes energy. When you think one thing, feel another, do another, and wish for another, your system enters into conflict. Noetics, Neville, and Ho'oponopono meet here beautifully. They all point, each in their own way, to the truth that real transformation begins within. In consciousness, in identity, in cleansing, in intention, in reconciling with who you truly are. Now let's go deeper into this in a very practical way. How to know if your tiredness is also a sign of misalignment. One of the signs is when you feel like you're living on autopilot. You do everything, but you don't feel present. You complete tasks, respond to people, solve problems, but you're internally distant. Another sign is when small things feel too heavy, because the weight isn't really in the task. It's in the invisible emotional accumulation you carry. Another strong sign is frequent irritability. When a person is disconnected from their own essence, everything seems to invade, annoy, and tighten. This happens because there's an excess of internal tension. It's also a sign of misalignment when you constantly compare yourself to others, because comparison pulls you off your axis. Instead of listening to your own truth, you try to follow someone else's frequency. And living outside your own rhythm is deeply exhausting. Another sign, you feel you've lost joy in things. Not necessarily because life has lost its beauty, but because you've lost touch with the part of you that can feel that beauty. And perhaps the most painful sign, you no longer recognize yourself. You look at yourself and think, when did I lose myself? When did I start living so far from my heart? Why can't I feel lightness anymore? These questions are not failure. They might be the beginning of the return. No one drifts away from themselves all at once. It usually happens through small daily concessions. When you silence your intuition, when you accept what hurts, when you live not to disappoint, when you abandon yourself to keep bonds, when you shrink to fit in, when you say it's fine on the outside, while inside it isn't. Over time, this becomes identity. You forget you were once spontaneous. You forget you once felt clarity. You forget you once knew what you wanted. You forget what it was even like to be at peace. And that's why so many people think they were born tired. But no, more often than not, they've just been living far from their own truth for too long. Healing begins when you stop fighting the symptom and start listening to the message. Instead of repeating, I need to be more productive. I need to endure. I need to perform. I need to handle it all. You start asking, what within me is asking for reconnection? Where have I abandoned myself? Which version of myself am I trying to sustain? What memories am I repeating? What life am I living out of habit, not out of truth? This honesty is sacred. Because the return to essence doesn't begin with performance. It begins with truth. And truth, at first, may even hurt. But it also sets you free. Now, imagine you are standing before yourself. Not your external image, but your tired part. Your confused part. Your part that got lost trying to do everything right. And gently, repeat to yourself mentally, I'm sorry I drifted away from myself. Forgive me for believing I had to abandon myself to be loved. I love you for still being here, after everything. I am grateful for the chance to come back home within myself. I'm sorry I drifted away from myself. Forgive me for believing I had to abandon myself to be loved. I love you for still being here, after everything. I am grateful for the chance to come back home within myself. I'm sorry I drifted away from myself. Forgive me for believing I had to abandon myself to be loved. I love you for still being here, after everything. I am grateful for the chance to come back home within myself. Breathe. Again. I'm sorry for the memories that made me live in fear and disconnection. Forgive me for every time I ignored my truth. I love you, my soul, my essence, my real presence. I am grateful for the cleansing that is already happening now. I'm sorry for the memories that made me live in fear and disconnection. Forgive me for every time I ignored my truth. I love you, my soul, my essence, my real presence. I am grateful for the cleansing that is already happening now. I'm sorry for the memories that made me live in fear and disconnection. Forgive me for every time I ignored my truth. I love you, my soul, my essence, my real presence. I am grateful for the cleansing that is already happening now. Notice, Ho'oponopono doesn't require you to understand everything immediately. It only asks for openness, humility, surrender, a sincere desire to cleanse. Now unite this with Neville. Close your eyes and ask yourself, how would the version of me that is fully aligned with who I am feel? Perhaps she feels at peace. Perhaps light. Perhaps safe. Perhaps quietly confident. Perhaps whole. Now, instead of seeking this state outside yourself, try assuming it for a few moments. No effort. No self-demand. No need to prove anything. Just feel. I am someone in coherence with my essence. I am someone who doesn't need to betray myself to belong. I am someone who can live in truth. I am someone guided by peace, clarity, and presence. Neville taught that the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret. So feel the reality of already returning to yourself, already rediscovering yourself, already becoming compatible with a more aligned life. It's not mental theater. It's inner re-education. From the noetic perspective applied to inner development, there is strength when there is coherence. When you think with clarity, feel with truth, intend with presence, and act in agreement with your essence, your energy stops leaking into internal conflicts. And this generates something precious: vitality. Many people seek more energy without realizing that much of their energy returns when the inner war diminishes. You don't need to fabricate a soul. You need to remove the excess noise. Coherence is a kind of reorganization of the self. You start saying fewer yes out of fear. You start honoring your time more. You start observing yourself more truthfully. You start noticing where there is unnecessary weight. You start feeling, little by little, that life begins to breathe again within you. From today onward, observe your tiredness more deeply. It is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a messenger. When you feel exhausted, instead of just demanding more from yourself, try asking, is this lack of rest or excessive misalignment? Ask, am I tired from the task or tired from the way I'm forcing myself to exist? Practice Ho'oponopono when you feel a nameless weight. Repeat, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. I'm grateful. Internally assume, as Neville taught, a new state. The state of someone who lives in peace with themselves, even if only for a few minutes a day. Cultivate coherence. Think less against yourself. Feel less guilt for being human. Act more in accordance with your possible truth today. You don't need to change your whole life in one day, but you need to start returning. And every true return begins within. Perhaps you are not broken. Perhaps you are just distant from yourself. Perhaps your soul is not weak. Perhaps it's just tired of sustaining what is not true. Perhaps your body is trying to save you, asking for a pause, for listening, for cleansing, for return. You don't need to hate yourself to change. You don't need to force yourself to awaken. You don't need to keep living at war with your own essence. There is a path back, and that path begins when you listen to yourself with love, when you cleanse with humility, when you assume a new identity with awareness, and when you allow your energy to stop being trapped in the character and return to the being. You are not just here to survive. You are here to exist in truth. And the more aligned you are with who you truly are, the less life will feel like a burden, and the more it will begin to feel like flow. Thank you for allowing yourself to learn, cleanse, and evolve more and more. Today we saw that often, what seems like tiredness is not merely a lack of rest, but a deep sign of misalignment with your own essence. We talked about how Ho'oponopono can clear memories that distance us from who we truly are, how Neville Goddard teaches us to assume a new state of identity, and how Noetics shows us the importance of consciousness, coherence, and intention in our life experience. If this video has helped you in any way, please leave your like, share in the comments what touched your heart the most, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to receive future messages of healing, expansion, and consciousness. See you in the next video with love and presence. Aloha!